Hello again, everybody. Welcome to USA Wrestling Weekly. I'm Scott Casper, and it's time to take a look at this week's news and features from USA Wrestling, the national governing body of our sport. For wrestlers and fans worldwide, it all came down to one day, Sunday, September 8th. The International Olympic Committee was meeting in Buenos Aires, Argentina, with some serious decisions. Perhaps the most important, the selection of additional sport for the program at the 2020 and 2024 Games. Wrestling, the oldest sport known to man, had once had a permanent home in the ancient and modern Olympic Games, and yet it was fighting for its Olympic future, along with squash and a combined bid from both baseball and softball. Since February 12th, when the IOC Executive Board recommended that wrestling be removed as a core sport after the 2016 Games, there's been a worldwide outcry in support of the sport. Under the leadership of USA Wrestling, its Committee to Preserve Olympic Wrestling, and FILA, a full-scale campaign was launched to fight for the future of the sport. Well, the International Wrestling Federation made a number of important changes, including a new president in Nenad Lalovic, new rules, better governance, and more opportunity for women. In May, the IOC Executive Board voted wrestling onto a short list of 3 candidate sports, with the vote for that last position on the program taking place on Sunday. First, baseball and softball made their presentation to the IOC, followed by squash. Impressive indeed. Then it was time for wrestling. Our leaders were given 20 minutes to make their case for the sport, and wrestling's all-star team of presenters was ready. FILA President Nenad Lalovic kicked things off.
Let me begin by saying thank you for this opportunity to save our sport of wrestling. It is an understatement to say that today is the most important day in the 3,000-year history of our sport. And believe me, we feel the weight of that history, because remaining on the Olympic program is crucial to wrestling's survival.
Past CEO of both the U.S. Olympic Committee and USA Wrestling, and now FILA Bureau member Jim Shear, presented wrestling's case to the IOC.
I've been involved with wrestling virtually all of my life, and I have never seen our sport so invigorated, so focused, and so united as we have been this past year. Dear members, you've heard a lot today about what is and what is not a new sport for the Olympic Games. If there's one thing that you remember from this presentation, it is that wrestling is new in virtually every way. The EB's decision was a wake-up call for FILA. We've turned it into a huge opportunity for the sport and, we believe, the Olympic movement.
A past Olympic medalist and now vice president of the French Wrestling Federation, Legrand, was next.
I'm here to speak to you about one of the greatest loves in my life, wrestling. I bet you're expecting me to say something different. Wrestling is probably not a girl's first choice, and it was the same for me. But I went into wrestling thanks to my father and my uncle, who both of them were wrestlers. And once I started, there was no going back.
Olympic champ for Canada and now president of the Nigerian Wrestling Federation, Daniel Igali had a compelling story to share.
I am an example of how the sport of wrestling changed one life, mine, and how it can change the lives of other young people in my home country. To wrestle is indeed to be human, but often the competition is not only on the mats, it's often in the minds and in the hearts. Dear members, wrestling transformed me, and is now transforming itself.
Another example of how wrestling affects lives was shared by Olympic champ and 2-time Olympic medalist Carol Wynn.
Now, as a kid, I tried just about every sport, and then I found wrestling. And like Lise, I fell in love with it. Its combative nature cultivated the determination and dedication needed in the pursuit of excellence. As a woman, wrestling gave me strength and confidence, and it empowered me to my full potential. It takes courage to step out on the mat with that tight singlet on, with no armor, no equipment, other than your hands, your heart, and your mind.
Well, the dynamic presentation featured 2 fantastic videos showing the power, passion, and excitement of the sport, and then the team answered a number of questions from IOC members. And then it was time to vote, as 95 IOC members went to a private ballot. Then came the moment of truth as IOC President Jacques Rogue read the exciting results.
With 49 votes, wrestling has been elected for the 2020 Games.
Well, the wrestling delegation of Buenos Aires jumped up in celebration of the sport's first ballot victory that restored wrestling in its proper place in the 2020 and 2024 Olympic program. And fans around the world shared in the excitement. Shortly after the decision, FILA President Lalovic spoke at a press conference organized by the IOC.
What we try to do is to update our sport, to make it more spectacular, more watchable, understandable, rules understandable, and that is the only way to fulfill the wrestling halls.
Our news continues after the short timeout. Stay tuned.
ASICS has been there. They've been the lifeblood of the sport. It's been a long time, and they've been at the top of the game every year, forever. And I'll tell you what, now that I think about it, maybe that's where I've gotten my inspiration, because you know, I always want to be in the top of my game in wrestling, and I think that's where ASICS is and wants to be as well.
There comes a point in your life that determines who you are, whether you will lead or follow, whether you will fight or give in, whether you will win or lose, and what you will count as your victory.
Both of these guys are explosive, and it's not over. This is going to be a great match.
During the trip to Buenos Aires, CPOW Chief of Operations Mike Rosati captured interviews with leaders from the U.S. delegation. USA Wrestling's Executive Director Rich Bender started him off.
I was obviously incredibly proud of our presentation team. I think very proud of the preparation that a lot of people put into making sure wrestling was presented properly today at the session. And you know, obviously, I don't think I took a breath for 6-7 minutes there at the end. You know, big win for us, for the sport of wrestling, and I think something that we need to build upon.
CPOW Chairman Bill Shear.
Well, early on, there was a lot of issues with the direction of FILA. They seemed to be foundering a little bit into March and April, and there was kind of a real crisis on which direction FILA was going to take. Were they going to institute the necessary changes? And I think that was probably the low point of the bidding process. But FILA made the necessary changes. They moved forward. They improved the organization. And of course, the high point is obviously this decision today.
USA Wrestling President James Ravenak.
When you went through all three presentations, Mike, it was certainly apparent, you know, the history of our sport was going to prevail, and not that the other sports wasn't, you know, they didn't deserve a chance to be an Olympic program, but certainly 3,000 years of history came out all at once. And to be in the room and to feel that emotion, to be with the Russians, the Turks, you know, we've had the Japanese with us, you know, and then to hear it go through and that first vote to get it and not have to narrow it down to 2 was just to show you that the General Assembly of the IOC wanted us back in.
Jim Shear, who did a wonderful job as presenters, shared his thoughts.
Well, we're just thrilled and relieved that wrestling's back on the program. It's been a long 7 months, but a testament to all the millions of wrestlers around the world and those in the United States who believed in the sport, came forward, supported it, allowed FILA to address the issues, and gave the IOC a reason to put wrestling back on the program.
Actor Billy Baldwin is also a leader within CPOW. He was on hand.
It was a very, very emotional, powerful, exhilarating moment. I'm still kind of buzzing hours later as a result of that announcement. It was great to turn around and to be able to throw your arms around, Rich Bender and James Ravenak and the Shear brothers, but also to see the members of the Russian Federation that were here too, that I've become friends with over this throughout this campaign.
FILA Vice President Stan Dezick.
I'm proud of that FILA had the fortitude to face its demons, but more importantly, I'm proud of the unlikely alliance of countries that came together for the sport of wrestling, where in no other arena would they be so aligned as they would be for the sport of wrestling. And that, I think, epitomizes the foundation of our sport and what we need to build upon.
Well, fans around the world awaited the news from Buenos Aires that would determine the future of the sport. In a number of wrestling hotbeds around the U.S., watch parties were organized for athletes and coaches to watch the vote as it happened. One of those parties was held in Colorado Springs at the national headquarters of USA Wrestling, where breakfast was served to nearly 100 people, including current and past athletes, coaches and staff members, and supporters who filled the conference room and the coach's office to watch the coverage. Here's the reaction from the announcement from IOC President Rowe.
With 49 votes, wrestling has been elected for the
Olympic bronze medalist, two-time Olympian Clarissa Chun talked about the excitement.
I think they couldn't have chosen a better panel of presenters. Oh my gosh, I couldn't have seen it gone a better way. I was nervous. I had that whole nerves flowing through my whole body, and I still have that after effect high, I guess,
Yeah. A world champion and Olympian, USA Wrestling's Associate Executive Director Les Gutches talked about the decision.
So you start with FILA, changes in the governance and the leadership there. Our rules are improved. The way we're presenting and marketing the sport, to the general public and our fans has changed. And while those have been great changes, I think this is a great opportunity to ride that wave of positive energy and enthusiasm to continue to make the sport better. And I think the future is brighter for wrestling than it ever has been.
World champ Adeline Grace shared her excitement.
I'm so excited, so relieved. I think I've been trying to stay a little even-keeled, and Terry's done a great job keeping us calm and keeping us level-headed going into World Championships, but it's definitely a sigh of relief. I mean, knowing that the little girls coming up and how have the Olympic dream is so exciting. I'm just so excited.
Helen Maroulis, world silver medalist, was on hand.
I'm ecstatic. I'm so happy. I'm so thankful that the IOC recognized our changes and that FILA listened, FILA made the changes. I'm so thankful that the whole community came together all over the world. I can't put it into words. I'm so proud of our sport and everyone's efforts.
National women's coach Terry Steiner.
I think it's great. I think Nidad Malovic is an outstanding leader who listens to the people, and we just haven't had that before with FILA. And so I'm very happy. I thought the presentation team was a great, dynamic group, and they did a great job of selling the sport.
Well, the National Wrestling Hall of Fame in Stillwater also had an IOC watch party with people from around the region in attendance. Stillwater, of course, the home of Oklahoma State, a program with a storied tradition at the Olympic level as well. Following the IOC announcement, Hall of Fame Executive Director Leroy Smith talked to us about the road to success.
As you heard in the comments and the presentation of our FILA representatives, that our governance is being restructured, our leadership is being redefined, and so we're doing a complete reorganization of our international federation. What will that mean? It will mean more opportunities for females in wrestling. It will mean a more staged event that's entertainment driven.
A year ago, Coleman Scott won an Olympic bronze for the U.S. in freestyle. Still competing, he talked about keeping the Olympic dream alive for the young people.
We had a good presentation, very good panel that we picked. I'm glad we didn't take it lightly. I think some of the guys, Daniel Igali, one of the best speakers I've seen in a long time, and Carol, and a lot of kids in here, and that was for them.
One of the greatest wrestlers in history and the head coach of Oklahoma State, two-time Olympic champ John Smith.
You don't get voted out 6 months ago and get voted back in. It's the first time in the history of the Olympic movement that that's ever happened. The wrestling community across the world spoke out. And ultimately, I think it has been a process for us all that has been good. It's helped us quickly, internationally, make quick changes from our leadership down.
From Stillwater to Iowa City, wrestling is a big deal there and the home of the Hawkeyes, one of the richest wrestling hotbeds on earth. And on that campus, wrestlers came together to watch the vote and share in the celebration. The legendary coach, Dan Gable, won Olympic gold and coached several Olympic teams himself. As a leader for CPAL, he made a big contribution to the cause.
Wrestling, if we hadn't won this vote, we wouldn't have given up. It would have been harder to move forward than it is because we won the vote. It's going to be easier to move forward. It's always easier to work on success than defeat. However, every once in a while, you do have a defeat, and we felt like that defeat was February when they threw us out.
Two-time world champ and Olympic medalist Terry Brands shared his reaction.
You got to feel good about it, and I think that, you know, the things that we said about Jim and Bill Shear, you saw it. And you saw great leadership from Lalovic, and that's really the first time I've heard him speak at length, and very impressed, very impressed. And they said they were going to create a new FILA, and they did. They created a new FILA with roots that are thousands of years old.
Our news continues from Buenos Aires, Argentina when we return. Stay tuned.
Wrestlers, are you ready for the next step? USA Wrestling challenges you to test your skills at the USA Wrestling Cliff Keen Athletic Folkstyle Nationals. Become a national champion. Head to the Unidome in Cedar Falls, Iowa on April 5th and 6th to compete against the best wrestlers in the country. Last year's event featured 1,200 cadet and junior wrestlers from 32 states on 26 mats. For more information about this event and other tournaments, visit usawrestlingevents.com.
Each season, Liberty Mutual's Responsible Sports Community Grant Program awards $65,000 to youth sports organizations and school sports programs that demonstrate their commitment to responsibility in youth sports. Your organization could be one of our 20 winners this season. It's easy. Simply visit responsiblesports.com and click on the Community Grant Program. Administrators register their organization with the program, then reach out to rally parents, coaches, and team supporters to log on and review either the Responsible Sports Parenting or Responsible Coaching Guide. Then complete the quiz and showcase your mastery of the concepts. Every successfully passed quiz is worth a point that you can credit to your favorite youth sports organization or school sports program. Connect with friends, family, and neighbors to rally more support. The teams and schools with the most points at the end of the grant period win. It's that simple. Watch the leaderboard throughout the grant season, then rally more of your supporters to increase your totals. Liberty Mutual is committed to celebrating and championing youth sports and to financially supporting organizations that demonstrate their commitment to responsible sports. Join the movement and start earning points toward your community grant.
Two of the major Beat the Streets programs in the country hosted watch parties of their own, including the New York City branch and the BTS Chicago. Local wrestlers came together for the verdict. Yet another gathering place, the National Wrestling Hall of Fame in Waterloo, Iowa. It came down to crunch time, and the American wrestling family came together once again for one of the most joyous days in the history of our sport. Well, within seconds of the decision, the news hit worldwide television and radio, reaching wrestlers throughout hundreds of nations. The U.S. World Freestyle team was in the last phase of training for the upcoming World Championships in Hungary when the decision reached them. Team chiropractor Fred Roberto of Maximize Living captured these interviews exclusively for USA Wrestling Weekly. Olympic and world champ Tom Brands is the coach of Iowa Hawkeyes and one of the 2013 U.S. World Team coaches.
From where we sit, that's a good thing. I'm
surprised a little bit on maybe some of the questions that were thrown at the committee. And I think the way that they were answered was good. It seems like it's all about the future. That's important, to go forward with the future in mind. I think that's one of the strongest things that we've done as a sport.
2000 Olympic champ Brendan Slay is the assistant national freestyle coach for USA Wrestling. He's helping to prepare these athletes for competition.
There were some anxious moments, a lot of probably nerves, hopes and dreams on the line, and our team surrounded the phone, and actually we ended up finding out through Twitter. Technology is amazing. We look on the phone and we see officially that wrestling with 49 votes, over 24 and 22 I think for the other sports, got voted back to the Olympic program for 2020 and 2024.
U.S. World Team member Reese Humphrey gave his perspective.
I'm really excited that wrestling is back in the Olympics for 2020, 2024. We still have a long road ahead of us to get it in 28 and get it back into be a core sport. But it's exciting for me to let the legends of our Olympic champions and our world champions live on and have it be a sport in the Olympics for the next 8 years. One thing that I think about is my kids. If they want to wrestle and if they want to compete at a really high level, it's just always been the goal to be an Olympic champion.
1996 Olympian and world team coach this year, Lou Roselli talked to us about the decision.
We're about 7 days out from the World Championships, so we're preparing to get ready to win some gold medals. Last night's decision by the IOC to keep wrestling in the 2020 and 2024 Olympic Games was a huge thing. We all kind of nestled up. Everyone was watching it, following on Twitter, and everyone's excited here that wrestling will be in those games.
National freestyle coach Zeke Jones was a world champ and an Olympic medalist. He was joined by one of the coaches at the camp in Armenia.
Wrestling's responsible for why it ended up in this position, but it's also responsible for getting it back into the program. Wrestlers are, people that can adapt and change, and it's just like a wrestling match. You learn to adjust to become the best in the world on the mat. You do the same thing with your sport, and I think this is the best thing that's ever happened to us, and we're now going to revolutionize the sport of wrestling.
Keep up to date with all the news from wrestling on this show and at themat.com. We'll be right back.
There comes a point in your life that determines who you are, whether you will lead or follow, whether you will fight or give in, whether you will win or lose, and what you will count as your victory.
Man, both of these guys are explosive, and it's not over. This is going to be a great match.
Now, just 1 week after the vote in Buenos Aires, it's the biggest international wrestling event of the year, the 2013 World Championships of Wrestling in Budapest, Hungary. The world's best athletes in all three Olympic styles will come together in true showcase of Olympic wrestling. The competition takes place September 16th to the 22nd and will begin with men's freestyle, followed by women's and then Greco-Roman. Team USA enters the World Championships well prepared with high hopes. The men's freestyle team is led by world and Olympic champion Jordan Burroughs at 163 pounds and Olympian and 2009 world bronze medalist Travel Delegnev at heavyweight. Now in women's freestyle, a pair of returning world champs will take to the mats for Team USA, seeking consecutive golds. Can they do it? Elena Peroskova at 138 pounds and Adeline Gray at 158 pounds are there to prove it. World silver medalist Helen Merlis at 121 and world bronze medalist Alyssa Lampe at 105 will also contend for the top spot on the podium. Well, the competition ends with Greco-Roman. Team USA is being led by two-time world bronze medalist and Olympian Justin Lester at 145 pounds. Joining him, two-time Olympian Spencer Mango at 121 pounds. Well, USA Wrestling Weekly, of course, will be on hand, and we'll have a full report on all the action over the next 2 weeks. We invite you to tune in. Well, it's time for our Photo of the Week contest. The pictures are sent in from families and fans from around the country and are being considered for our photo contest page in our USA Wrestler magazine and our USA Wrestling Facebook page. This week's photo comes from Buenos Aires, Argentina. It was taken by Getty Images. It shows USA Wrestling President James Ravenak, CPOW member and actor Billy Baldwin, and FILA press officer Bob Condren, all from the U.S. Look at them as they celebrate the IOC decision. It restored wrestling to the 2020 and 2024 Olympic Games. Amazing. Have your photographs considered for our contest simply by emailing to our good friend Gary Abbott at gabbott@usawrestling.org. Well, that'll do it for an emotional week for all of us at USA Wrestling. And from this week's show, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for watching. I'm Scott Casper, and we'll talk to you next week.